The Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. The early history of mankind can be defined by the weapons used to smite one's enemies. It was centuries later that swordsmiths took weaponry to a whole other level, by forging various steel alloys to create a blade that was stronger than anything seen before. Today we know it as Damascus steel, named after the ancient city in Syria. In a workshop above Highway 21 outside of Boise, there's a man who is a master of this once lost art. He certainly knows how to make weapons, but these days his main interest is creating enduring kitchen knives.
Carbon's what makes iron into steel. So we're making a Damascus pattern that I invented in 2003, I believe it was. I call it River of Fire. What we call Damascus these days is more technically called pattern welded steel. It's a very similar technique to what the Japanese did, in where you take one or two particular kinds of steel and keep folding them to create a pattern in the material and mix it, kind of like if you were making bread dough is a very good analogy. There are a few people in the world that can replicate that nowadays. It was lost for a very long time.
Bill Burke's unique skills are a big reason the public is once again fascinated by what knife makers are able to create.
The unfortunate thing is people somehow think that you can make a high-quality knife in 3 to 6 hours, which is not the case. It takes a good solid week, 5 days, of 8 to 10 hours a day in front of that forge pounding that steel. That's just to get the bar of steel. That's not counting making the knife. And there's about a 98% loss of steel. I start with 2 stacks of steel and they're about 11 pounds apiece. So 22 pounds of steel.
Is that cool or what?
And when I get done, I get one knife that weighs about 8 to 9 ounces. That's all that's left.
So see, it's already starting to look like a knife.
Burke was a body and fender guy, working on cars and making knives part-time, when a tornado in Tennessee turned his life upside down and put his knives on the map. One of his 5-inch hunting knives saved 2 men trapped inside a crushed semi. A story in Blade magazine spread the word that Burke's small knife had cut through the steel cab, allowing the men to escape moments before the truck burst into flame. At the next knife show in Atlanta, Georgia, Burke's knives sold out in less than an hour.
I quit my day job and just started making knives full-time. I don't know what to say about it, just that I'm blessed that people like my work enough to pay me to do it. It's phenomenal to think that people appreciate my work that much.
Burke figures he makes around 40 or 50 knives a year. It's an exacting process, a time-consuming process, and it's catapulted him into the ranks of the very best. In fact, he's one of only about 120 in the world who hold the title of Master Bladesmith, accredited by the American Bladesmith Society.
And even somebody as dumb as I am are going to learn something in 20 years, you know, so.
Truth of the matter is, to become a master bladesmith, your knife has to cut a 1-inch hemp rope with one swing.
He's a bit nervous.
Cut a 2x4 in half twice, and then still be able to shave hair off your arm. And after that, you have to put your knife in a vise and bend it 90 degrees without it breaking.
It looks like
90 degrees?
Yep.
But don't get caught up in all that, says Burke.
Not even a crack.
All you really need to make a knife is a desire, some way to heat the steel, a hammer, and something to beat on. Having a grinder of some sort helps, but it's not really necessary. You can harden it, temper it, and sharpen it without really any grinding. Now, it'll take you 40 years to get there, but you can do it.
Of course, to do what Burke does also requires a fair amount of strength and the willingness to put up with excessive heat. It also helps to be able to reformat antique equipment to make it do exactly what you need it to do. Knowing some math also comes in handy,
4.625 is a 5/8, right?
as does an understanding of chemistry.
Now, as you heat steel up, the molecules actually go through a phase change. When it does that, the steel becomes non-magnetic. So these little thin bright ones are the nickel layers that we put in there. So I manipulate them until all those lines line up in a continuous pattern.
And then a whole lot of patience.
Set it in there for now, and now it's time for a cup of coffee.
In school, we all heard about the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, but what exactly does that mean?
What does it mean? It just means somebody built a roaring campfire in a bank of iron oxide and found this strange lump of stuff in the bottom when it went out, right? And maybe the wind blew, they had a big, white man's fire. It got hotter than normal. It created steel out of some iron oxide that was there in the dirt. And then he's like, oh, what's this? Man, it's harder than anything I know. Look, it'll break my bronze axe.
Burke's career may have begun with hunting knives, but these days most of his business is making high-performance kitchen knives.
When our first little recession hit there in 2007, hunting knives, which were my mainstay at the time, I couldn't hardly give one away. So now that's probably 90% of what I do is kitchen knives. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Japan for 28 days in 2006. But yeah, Japanese swords are probably why I'm so fanatical about knives. And the kitchen knives I make are Japanese style kitchen knives.
His knives normally sell for $2,000 to $3,000 a piece, and there's a backlog of about 2 years. But for Chef Taro Kobayashi, the price and the weight is definitely worth it.
When I look at a set of knives, if I have my collection of knives in front of me, the thing I know when you pick up a Burke is that it's gonna do the job. It is going to perform better than most knives, always. I do have a knife that is, I've just never seen anything really like it. It's like a peacock feather. It's kind of like mathematically nerdy, perfect in a sense. From all the knives that I've used, and I've probably used 50 custom makers, and Bill is my personal favorite. I believe him to be one of the best knife makers in this country.